thank you for joining me. My name is Marilyn Tran and I'm a pediatric occupational therapist at Notch Therapy in Queensland, Australia. This presentation is called Understanding Sensory Processing Differences. Down Syndrome Queensland has partnered with Notch Occupational Therapy to create this resource. It's designed to support educators and school staff working with individuals with Down syndrome, intellectual disability, developmental delay, and other complex profiles. Our aim is to help you better understand how sensory processing differences may impact your students and to share practical, everyday strategies that you can use to support them in the classroom. Sensory processing is how our brain receives, interprets, and responds to information from the senses, like sound, touch, or movement. It's something we all do, but some students process this information differently. This can impact how they learn, behave, and participate in the classroom. Some students spend a lot of energy just trying to cope with the sensory demands of their environment. Over time, this can lead to fatigue, emotional dysregulation, or withdrawing from tasks and interactions. There are several sensory systems that shape how we experience and engage with the world. The vestibular system helps us with movement and balance. Proprioception gives us body awareness, like knowing where our limbs are without looking. The tactile system is our sense of touch, including texture, temperature, and pressure. Auditory processing relates to how we hear and make sense of sound. The visual system includes how we take in light, movement, and visual clutter. And finally, olfactory and gustatory processing involves smell and taste. All of these systems work together, mostly without us even realizing, to help us feel safe, regulated, and ready to learn. Let's take a look at the pyramid of learning. At the very base are the sensory systems like touch, movement, body awareness. These are the foundations that support everything else. When a student's sensory systems and needs are well supported, it allows higher level skills like attention, behavior, learning, and participation in daily tasks for this to develop smoothly. But if the sensory foundation is unsteady or overwhelmed, things at the top, like emotional regulation, classroom participation, or daily routines, can start to break down. That's why understanding a student's sensory processing is so important. When we support these needs, we're not just helping them feel more comfortable, we're helping them engage, learn, and thrive across all areas of life. Now let's look at how sensory behaviors can present differently across the sensory systems. Some students display active behaviors. For example, they may actively seek or avoid certain sensory input. These behaviors are often more visible to those around them. Whereas when they show passive behaviors, for example, feeling more overwhelmed or disengaged or registering the input less, this can be harder to notice. Here are a few examples. A student may be vestibular seeking, craving movement like spinning, rolling around. In another sense, so they might be tactile avoidant, pulling away from certain textures or unexpected touch. They can be sensitive to auditory input, getting easily distracted or distressed by background noise. Or showing low registration of, let's say, visual input, meaning they miss visual cues or don't seem to notice what's happening around them. It's important to remember that every student is different and they might seek sensory input in one system but avoid it in another. For example, just because a student loves movement doesn't mean that they'll also love loud sounds or messy play and vice versa. Understanding what a student's sensory behavior is communicating helps us respond appropriately and tailor strategies that support their learning, regulation, and well-being. A sensory assessment is one component of an OT assessment. It helps us understand how a student is processing sensory input across different environments. It can provide valuable insight into behaviors such as distraction, avoidance, meltdowns, or shutdowns, and whether those behaviors may be linked to unmet sensory needs. A sensory assessment can also help determine whether an OT referral is appropriate. It also shows us how sensory processing impacts the students' everyday lives, including their ability to eat, sleep, regulate their emotions, learn and interact socially. And perhaps most significantly, it empowers educators, families, and the student by offering clear, practical strategies that can be used consistently across school and home settings. Once a student has had a sensory assessment, their OT can provide personalized clinical advice and strategies tailored to the student's needs. So how do we implement these strategies effectively in the classroom? Start by using the information from the OT's discussions, reports, assessments, and recommendations. These insights will help guide the supports you put in place. Look for ways to embed these strategies into the students' daily routines, not just during support times, but throughout the school day if possible. As you trial new strategies, observe how the student responds. Pay attention to their arousal levels, focus, and participation. And most importantly, stay connected with the student's family, support network, and OT. Working together ensures consistency across settings and ultimately gives the student the best chance to thrive. Here are some examples of practical strategies to support students in the classroom with sensory differences. For example, for the vestibular system, if a child is seeking movement, allowing them to use alternate postures like standing instead of sitting for a short period of time, or trialing a wobble cushion and providing regular movement breaks during activities or transitions. For students sensitive to noise cancelling headphones or presenting instructions visually can reduce overwhelm and increase engagement. These strategies are a starting point to consider, trial, and adapt based on students' individual needs. It's important this is done collaboratively with the occupational therapist, family, and support team. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about sensory processing and how it can impact your students. Your commitment to understanding and adapting your classroom support really does make a meaningful difference for students with sensory differences.